Frightful called Cree once. She did not call Sam by his falcon name. You're getting wilder, Frightful, he said. The bond between us is breaking down. That's good. Good for you. Sad for me. Sam made Oxy comfortable inside the tree, then took the trail to Mrs. Strawberry's farm and her collection of pipes and lumber and wheels and scraps of metal. On the way home, he asked Bando for help, and before the sun set, they had put Oxy unhooded into the nest box and erected pole box and her in the clearing by the mill pond. The box now had a porch where Frightful could drop food without getting jabbed. They stood back and admired their work. It's getting late, Sam said when the job was done. Aren't you worried about Zella? No, Bando said. I've got a little gadget in my pocket called a cell phone. Zella will call it if she feels any contractions. Wow, said Sam, remarking on Zella and the telephone. Oxy walked out on the porch and cacked angrily. Neat bird, said Bando, grinning. She really is, Sam said, and smiled broadly. She does seem a little accident prone, Bando remarked. It's been one crisis after another for that bird. Yeah, Sam mused. Only 3 out of 10 birds live long enough to raise their own young. Seems, Bando said. She must be one of those three. She somehow survived all the hazards of her first 40 days. Sam nodded as he gripped the pole to see if it was firmly planted. I'd like to see a raccoon scale that, he said. Looks Jesse proof to me, said Bando. Do you realize this is the little Isis' fourth nest site? Sam said. I keep wondering what kind of nest she will choose when she grows up and looks for an eyrie. She might be a gypsy nester. That's proper, Bando said. After all, she is Falco peregrinus, the pilgrim falcon. They exchanged serious glances. They knew it was important to show this Ias a Peregrine's world, and they weren't sure they had done that. Oxy was a bit oblivious to this chatter. She had her own agenda with her world, and Frightful was the first to discover it. The very next day, Frightful landed on the airy porch. She was leaning over to pluck a pigeon when Oxy charged, her beak open, feathers raised. She hit her full force. Frightful jumped onto her wings, left the full food, and flew to the top of the ancient hemlock. She shook out her ruffled feathers. Oxy had graduated from grammar school. From that moment on, Frightful fed her not in the box but on the wing. She dropped food onto the hacking porch and sped away. She did not perch in the hemlock to chaperone Oxy anymore, but flew over the mountain to the cupola on the Delhi courthouse. There, she kept the pigeons of Delhi from spreading disease. One morning, she recognized Leon Longbridge standing on the sidewalk. With him were 2 children. She kept them in the corner of her eye while she watched the pigeons. That is our falcon, Leon Longbridge said, focusing his binoculars on Frightful. He grinned and handed the field glasses to Molly. How do you know? Molly asked. She has very dark, almost black head, he said, and her eyes are quite large, larger than most peregrines. When you watch birds long enough, you see the differences. She's our bird, all right. He smiled, but did not tell the kids that he had seen the Delhi falcon feeding the third chick in a box on Sam Gribley's mountain. Hey, exclaimed Molly, she sure is our bird. She had little heart-shaped black spots on her breast feathers. I looked at them a million times from my bedroom window. You're a good observer, Leon said. Molly looked pleased and passed the glasses to Jose as Hughie Smith joined them on his way to his drumming lessons. Molly pointed out Frightful to him. Neat, he said, and looked up at the conservation officer. Mr. Longbridge, when can we visit our chicks at Perry Knowlton's? In about 2 weeks, Leon replied. He doesn't want them to get comfortable with people while they're young. He's keeping them as wild as possible. He put them with a breeding pair that had only one eyes, and they've been taking care of them. They just might forget their early nurturing by people and become wild. I hope so, said Molly. Leon went on. Perry said I could bring you all over when he hacks the birds. They'll fly they'll fly if they're afraid of you, and that's what we want them to do. Frightful, who was tipping her head now and then to focus on Leon Longbridge and the kids, also had an eye on the courthouse pigeons. When they fanned out and came back together in a slivery knot, she dropped from the cupola, scattered them, and reaching down with one golden foot, picked up the dumb bird who was flying the wrong way. Frightful carried the food up over the west branch of the Delaware. Where is she going? Hughie asked. Let's find out, Jose piped. Can we follow her, Mr. Longbridge? You're real good at that. I don't think we should, Leon answered. We've given her enough trouble. Don't you think she needs some privacy? Yes, said Molly emphatically, or she won't come back next year. Peregrine falcons like privacy. So they stood on the street and watched Frightful until she was too far away to see, which was in mere seconds. Suddenly, Leon Longbridge put his glasses in his eyes and focused them overhead. Look, there's her mate, he exclaimed excitedly. Cool, said Yugi. Maybe they'll nest again. It's not too late, is it? I'm afraid it is, Leon Longbridge said. The Tearsal's roaming away from the Eyrie. That means he's done nesting. What do we do now? Complained Jose. We can't see the chicks and we can't follow the falcon. There there are some transformers up the valley where our falcon went, said Molly. Oh, said Yugi, back to letter writing. Okay, I'm getting good at that. Frightful flew high over one of the transformers Molly was speaking of. She found an updraft on the side of the mountain and rode it without beating a wing. She tipped and side slipped around the big tree and dropped the pigeon. The bird hit the porch, bounced, and went over the edge. Oxy jumped for it, spread her wings, and was flying. She flapped, shot ahead, and crashed into the ancient hemlock. Grabbing at limbs with her feet, she fell several yards before she got a good grip and flapped herself upright. Oxy saw the bird. It lay on the ground by Baron Weasel's door. She was very hungry. She dropped down on it, clutched it, then flapped her wings to get airborne. Beating them hard, she skimmed forward but could not get off the ground. At the edge of the mill pond, she stopped and looked behind her. She had lost the bird. A bullfrog moved. She thrust out a foot and snagged it. This was not her kind of food, and she let it go. She realized she was on the ground and became nervous. She opened her wings. There was no breeze to give her lift. Frightful's Mountain was a poor place to get airborne. She ran, wings open, pantaloons fluttering, and jumped up onto the stone table. She sensed a silence around her. Mo was asleep on Sam's bed in the tree. Jessie was down at Peaks Brook. Baron Weasel was in his burrow. The barred owl was perched on a limb halfway down Frightful's Mountain. Only Sam was watching, and he was inside the mill house. Accident-prone Oxy, he said to himself. She's going to get killed if she stays out in the open like that. I should grab her feet and toss her into a wind. No, that's not right. She's going to have to find out for herself. He put his elbows on the windowsill. It's sure terrible, he mused, to be a parent knowing there are eagles and goshawks lurking everywhere in these mountains. Sam stood still and watched. Oxy remained on the table. She was uncomfortable there. Once more she spread her wings, and once more she got no lift. There was no wind to help her fly. Mole woke up, smelled Oxy, and pushed open the deerskin door. His nose directed his eyes, and he ran at her as he ran at pheasants to flush them up. He never reached her. Frightful dropped from the sky and hit Mole with the force of a jackhammer. He yipped and rolled into the mill pond stunned. His head went under, and he gulped water. Terrified, Oxy beat her wings with all her strength and flew. She flew above Sam, who had waded into the pole pond to save Mole. She came to rest on the mill house roof. Sam pulled the drowning dog to shore. Your mouth's too big for mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, he said. I'll try the Heimlich maneuver. He pressed down on Mole's chest, then let go. Mole spluttered and breathed. He rolled his eyes at Sam. Frightful got you, he said. You can't mess with her eyes. She's a winged lioness. He helped Mole to his feet. You and I had just better stay in the hemlock tree until Frightful gets this kid on wing and out of here, or someone is going to get killed. He helped Mole, who was dripping and coughing, up the slope and into the hemlock. Mole lay down on the floor. After a short while, he breathed normally and thumped his tail. The talon cut on his head and was bleeding profusely. Sam washed it with cold water, saw it was not severe, and patched it with jewel weed leaves to stop the flow of blood. Then he gave Mole a deer bone for consolation and went to his desk. He opened a book. Well, as long as we're stuck here, he said, you might as well learn something. I'll read to you. He began. With his first trip to France in 1781, a 5-year period began in which Thomas Paine used his skill to work more openly on behalf of the United States to ensure that his liberal Republican ideals were implemented. He glanced at Mole. The dog's eyes were closed. We're on page 131 in Jack Fruchtman Jr.'s book called Thomas Paine, he said. Mole opened his eyes and thumped his tail. Sam went on reading.